Hey, what up, everybody? It's Moss coming to you with a Modern Horizons 3 set review. Now, chances are, you're probably asking yourself, why are we doing this? Aspiring Spike's already done his comprehensive set review. We've seen a lot of the other Magic the Gathering talking heads doing their own versions of this, so why do we need this person doing one? And the answer is real simple. We want a good set review that looks at the modern format the way that people will be trying to innovate it. Let's add some of these new cards to existing decks and see how it powers them up. We're going to look at strictly just the playable cards, the ones that slot into existing decks, and maybe at the end talk a little bit about some of these decks that have come out of the streamer events and maybe some potential cards that we hope slide in. Now, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Spike, Dingo, Doomwake, they're great dudes. They are entertaining to watch, but they're not really approaching modern, at least in their content creation early on, the streamer events they've been in. They're not approaching modern the same way that most other like competitive grinders are going to. They're trying to create new decks. There's some innovation that's going on, but not a whole lot. Spike even talked about this when he and Dingo were streaming about how people were saying, oh, let's just see these decks run against stock Titan or stock Murktide, which is what realistically a lot of us are going to be doing. But they got to make content. They got to make it interesting. They got to highlight all of these new cards. So no shade to them in that regard, but we're going to jump into this the way that a lot of people will be approaching the format. We're going to look at existing decks, some decks that have maybe died off in Modern's past, and we're going to try to bring them all back, see how they can improve with these new additions. And the first place that we have to start is where the Card Kingdom crew really showed us the power of Modern's past. Now, we're not looking at Cloud Post here. Thankfully, Cloud Post is not coming back. But Eldrazi might. Now, I wasn't around for the Eldrazi winter. Eye of Ugin being banned is definitely a good thing. But where we had Hogak summer with MH1, this might be the hot Eldrazi summer with MH3. The reason being, Ugin's Labyrinth does a really good impersonation of what Eye of Ugin tried to do. Tuck a big creature under it, like a Null Drifter, and start casting your little dudes as early as turn 1. Eldrazi Mimic is a real good start. Pair Eldrazi Mimic with a lot of the new, good, devoid creatures that have been printed into this set, and there's a lot of really strong potential. You've got cards like Null Elemental Blast that deal with the ley line of the Guild Pact meta that we're still trying to contend with. And I think we have a really strong contender for this deck coming back. The inclusion of cards like Eldrazi Linebreaker, which has already seen a good deal of play and even 5-0'd one of the streamer events not that long ago. This is a good deck to come back. This set has given it a lot of new tools, and I think we're going to unearth this thing and bring it back from the dead. Now, a couple of things that I want to see show up in there is stuff like Glaring Fleshraker. Making more Eldrazi spawns and then pinging each time a colorless creature enters, which includes the devoid creatures, is going to be huge. Ugin's Binding, which allows you to basically Psych Rift your opponents when you cast a big, thick creature, like a Null Drifter, like any of the Emerge spells from the BFZ block. This could be a really hot card and one that we should definitely pay attention to. we did get to see Kozilek's return, seeing some modern play. I think Ugin's Binding has that same potential. Now, for the mid range players, the Rakdos Scam players, the blue black mid range players, even if we're going to call Murktide a mid range deck, they're all just kind of breathing heavily when they look at the 4 cards that are on here from Modern Horizons 3. Reed Duke and like other Jund players can rejoice with the printing of Nethergoyf. They can go 8 Goyf in Modern and be happy. Really, they could have done it before, but Necrogoyf was such a disappointment that WotC really just had to run that back and do a black Goyf the right way. Necro Dominance is a perfect version of the broken Necropotence deck that was in Legacy. That is in Legacy. Being able to draw a lot of cards, and with things like Sheoldred, it's a chef's kiss. The limitation's fine. Doesn't really make it broken, but it definitely powers up a lot of things really well. You've got Psychic Frog. Aspiring Spike has been really high on this card recently. It's got so much text on it that it can't be that bad. It could potentially be really good. Give it flying, make it bigger, draw some cards. Pretty important. I'm looking and talking straight to you, Bo. Invert Polarity isn't great, but it does have potential. Murktide could want it. Is it Wizards, if that becomes a thing in Modern, could want it? But a counter spell that could let you take your opponent's cards on the stack is huge. I'm just going to flip a coin and take your copy of the One Ring. Huge. Flip a coin and take your Primeval Titan. Huge. Flip a coin, take your great big Eldrazi. Incredible. There's not really a whole lot of Cavernous Souls in the format, so there is potentially some place for this. But chances are, once Modern Horizons 3 hits the format and we give it a couple weeks, those caverns are going to be back out. So make sure that you're looking out for cards like this. Now, again, every single Magic talking head has talked about Affinity. Some of them are so happy they believe that Affinity is going to come back because of cards like Kappa Cannoneer. But the real reason why Affinity was even good in the first place is because of Mox Opal. When that card got banned, Affinity died because it could have been so fast, so quick, and everything would have been perfect for it. When we saw Up the Beanstalk get printed, people definitely made an attempt at playing Affinity then. Sure, we've got new cards that do similar things to Up the Beanstalk, but we're not going to see Affinity come back in the same way. Kappa Cannoneer is great, but I don't know if it's going to be great enough to help the Modern format. Refurbished Familiar might be gas and popper, but it's probably not going to be that great in Modern. Affinity could be back. There's going to be one person at everybody's LGS that is just psyched for Affinity to come back, but they're not going to really see that much joy because there's a lot of more broken big things in the Modern format. Now, here's the thing. Merfolk got some serious love in this set, but Merfolk can't be the only playable Kindred deck. Eldrazi can't be the only playable Kindred deck. We're bringing back Elf Ball as best as we can, and obviously Thranduil would absolutely appreciate this. Priest of Titania, Wirewood Symbiote, perfect cards in the Pauper version of Elves. I believe they both even see play in the Legacy version of Elves. We don't have Fury anymore. Kindred decks are making a comeback. Merfolk and Elves can exist now. Will they exist because of cards like Orcish Bowmaster that just ping both of these guys down? Maybe not. But we can be hopeful because it can get out of hand really quickly. And that's what those types of decks love to do so much. Now, if we're going to talk about stock Titan, if we're going to talk about the big stock decks of the format that get improvements, Titan is the biggest one. Flare of Cultivation to help you ramp up more and really help you ramp and get around Blood Moon and Harbinger of the Sea style effects. Huge. Play a Flare on 1 after you sack your Grazer to it. Get some basics. Pretty huge. 6 is a great piece that lets you retrace things from your graveyard with all the lands that you're going to start accruing. Fantastic. Shifting Woodland, allowing you to copy any permanent in your graveyard, is great. Titan's going to be all over this. 2 of these 3 cards are definitely going to see play there. But other rampy nonsense decks are going to love these 3. You're going to see these across the table from you once the next competitive Modern season starts up in August. But if you're in blue, you're going to run these. I talked a little bit about Merfolk when we were talking about Elves. Harbinger of the Seas is Magus of the Moon's wet cousin. It's perfect. All non-basics are islands. Not in addition to their other types. They're just islands. Island Walk gets that much better. You've got a Kindred typing for it. Perfection. Flare of Denial. We already see a lot of the Merfolk decks, a lot of the blue decks, already running things like Force of Negation, Subtlety. Why not just run Flare? Now, not every single blue deck can get away with this. Murktide, which is already on a decline, is not going to be running Flare of Denial. They're not sacking their Murktide or their Ledger Shredder to run this card. But we're definitely going to see Merfolk doing this. We're definitely going to see blue decks running Flare of Denial when they can do it for free within their existing constraints. It seems a little weird to be talking about sideboard cards here, but a lot of decks after the Lord of the Rings release started immediately running Stern Scolding. Alright, we don't need to worry about Peregrine Took getting scolded by Gandalf anymore, because Strict Serenade is like sweetly singing a song to all of these blue decks. Don't worry about all of the creatures. Don't worry about the One Ring. Don't worry about Wrenn and 6. Just play this. Sure, they get a 2/2 bird, but have you seen DRC when it gets 4 different permanent types in the graveyard? Ain't no worries. Have you seen Merfolk when they start swimming through because you got islands on your side of the battlefield? We're not going to be worried about a silly little bird. All the people who've been looking forward to having Baleful Strix are probably real sad right now, myself included, but you can't complain about basically a different version of Swan Song. And maybe a better version of Swan Song. Yawgmoth was the king of the modern format. Phyrexian Tower is basically the biggest improvement for the deck. Grist was already a huge part of the deck, especially with the Agatha's Soul Cauldron combination. Sure, you're not going to see that same effect with the new Grist, but those two cards in tandem are going to do a lot of good things for the Yawgmoth deck. Now, combine that with Marionette Apprentice. You already saw Blood Artist as a thing in the deck, but why not just give it an extra line of text? Not only when creatures leave, but when artifacts leave too. We've seen Doomwake and Spike and some other streamers already run the Cat Oven combo in Modern. Wouldn't it be great if you got 2 triggers off of that too? Marionette Apprentice is a real hot card for this format. Yawgmoth and Sack decks can rejoice at what this card is going to bring to the format. And it's a 1-2. It gets around Orcish Bowmaster, baby! Huge improvements. This is built with the existing constraints of the Modern format in mind, and it's already doing a lot of justice. And then there's Zoo. Okay, Leyline of the Guild Pact has broken the Modern format in half. But Cat Daddy right here, the man himself and his rippling pectorals, a Johnny, Nakatl Pariah, is right here. He's adding some things to the zoo. And really, we kind of love that for him. Now, while Cat Daddy's here and he's going to be throwing a lot of additional stuff at your opponents, some potential damage, pumping your cats, making more cats, really huge things that he can do to improve the zoo archetype. There's also a really strong chance that he might be good in a potential Winota shell, which is basically just zoo with extra steps. But another great inclusion for the zoo decks is Arena of Glory. Add red to your mana pool. Now remember, Leyline of the Guild Pact makes all of your lands all the types. So Leyline of the Guild Pact on 1, fetch land, turn 2, Arena of Glory, you exert it, and bada bing, bada boom, you're going to have a Scion of Draco with all of the text, all of the keywords, and it's going to have haste. This card is sick in the zoo archetype. And all of those 5 color players are going to be eyeing this card really strongly. It's definitely worth looking out for. Now, I would be remiss to not bring up the fact that, again, streamers like Dingo and Spike were testing in paper together. That Doomwake and so many others were in streamer events, and the Ruby Storm deck popped up. If that deck can survive the first couple of weeks after Modern Horizon 3's official release, which is technically tomorrow, June the 11th, for all of y'all wondering, this deck and these cards are going to be absolutely insane. For those of you who have been watching Aspiring Spike and Dingo's streams over the past couple of weeks, these 2 cards, Ral Monsoon Mage and Ruby Medallion, have put in work in bringing back the Storm archetype. Caleb Durward is going to be ecstatic to see this deck come back. Glimpse the Impossible has been a really interesting card to see coming into the format, and the fact that you get to make some colorless Eldrazi spawns too, to really just help give you more mana for more storming, is pretty sick. and the fact that Ral, especially when you're starting to storm off, can then just immediately ultimate and then still have some loyalty left over is huge. Don't sleep on these cards. We're already seeing Underworld Breach decks coming back in a big way. This might be another iteration of that same archetype. And obviously, we gotta let it burn. Alright? Usher would be proud of us right now for letting it burn. And we really gotta thank Mason Esports Clark here for birthing Flage into this format. Flage is the best Elder Giant I think that we've seen since Uro. Enter the battlefield, Lightning Helix. Boros, Exile 5, Lightning Helix again on a 6/6 body. Burn hasn't been that hot for a while. But with Flage, a big beater on a stick that happens to have extra text, huge. Now, a lot of people have criticized this set for being Commander Horizons. A lot of people have criticized these sets as basically trying to replace Legacy. When you see cards like Skoa, I see an argument for that. Sure, we're not going to get Fire Blast, but we got a Commander version of Fire Blast. Discard it, sack 2 mountains, boom, 4 damage. Oh, Leyline of the Guild Pact, boom. Ghostfire Slice, 4 damage to any target. For a single mana, that's real good. To have that against your Leyline of the Guild Pact opponent, Ghostfire Slice, Skoa, hit you for 12 on turn 2 is huge. And I'm a big fan of the Threshold lands. I don't know if they're going to be that impactful, but Barbarian Ring is basically like a modern version of Ramunap Ruins. And for those of you that haven't seen the other videos on my channel, I recently played my RCQ winning mono red list that had 4 copies of Ramunap Ruins. If Barbarian Ring existed, I probably would think about running that too. It's a real sick card, and I think it's got a lot of potential. Burn is already kind of hurting for extra slots, but I think that all of these could have a potential spot. And then, obviously, the sideboard, Urza Saga, those are all things that matter. Alright? Vexing Bauble, the moment that this got spoiled, everyone knew, okay, Saga deck's gotta run it. Okay, any deck with Karn, Scion of Urza, or whatever the good one, Great Creator is, they're gonna run that. That was an immediate and understood, okay, dope. Winter Moon, Disruptor Flute. Disruptor Flute has really shown its value in a lot of these streamer events. Winter Moon has definitely put in work, and it's been scaring people since it got spoiled. These are going to be amazing pieces. Meltdown basically says, forget every single construct token, which, by the way, if you see any of the members of Team Primetime, don't forget, we still got plenty of these construct tokens to go around. Meltdown's probably going to get rid of them, but hey, at least you'll have them. That, and it's going to destroy every other artifact. Again, Affinity's got a lot of hate positioned against it, but at least we're going to see some good answers coming out in this format. Now, again, I would be remiss to not bring up the fact that these streamers have been putting these decks out there. Okay, they've been kind of toying with some of the stock decks that we've seen, but one of the standout decks that we have seen emerge has been the Young Dingo Spike combo of the energy deck, the undefeated brew that they had made. As someone who came into Magic during the Kaladesh block, I've been looking for energy to be a respected and feared archetype. And with Modern Horizons 3, I think we finally have that chance. Combine that with just the goodest girl in Felia, and I really do think that this deck has legs. We might be draining ourselves of some energy, but it's gonna be worth it in a big way. But this deck is still gonna have to withstand the test that is going up against the existing meta with all the new tools that they're getting. Interacting with energy is gonna be hard. Interacting with artifacts, gonna be important. Interacting with casting spells from exile or from anywhere other than your hand is gonna be huge. Interacting with spells when no mana is being spent to cast them, it's gonna be important for us to do. So pay attention to what this deck ends up doing over the next couple of weeks. If it can make its way through June and early July, then that's the time to buy. And obviously, Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, is definitely going to be on these cards and on this format. Alright, everyone saw Doomwake and Magic Rainbows talking about Lelia the Blade Reforged. There was that screenshot that circulated on Twitter of Lelia and a Rhino's shell and all the cards exiled and her getting pumped to oblivion. Yeah, it's going to be good. Yeah, it's going to be powerful. Is it going to be exactly what the modern format needs? Who knows? Saffron Olive's already played the card in Arena's Brawl format and did some interesting things with just a bunch of Mountains, Cascade cards, and Discover cards. That could be a fun against the odds deck, and it could be a really fun, like, F&M brew that you're probably going to see played against you. Are you going to see it across the table from you at an RCQ in August? Maybe not. But it's important for us to be prepared for these things. If YouTube wants it, the people want it. Same with Guide of Souls. Sure, Spike, Dingo, Doom, and other streamers have been playing with the energy cards, but that's a Martyr card. Everybody with eyes know that Martyr proc wants that card. Being able to pump your own creatures and turn them into angels, huge. Full send, Martyr proc, it's going to be good. But will it be competitive good? Who knows? Primal Prayers, Doomwake super high on the card, another good energy card. You get to cast stuff basically for free by paying energy rather than paying its mana cost, and they get flash if their creature spells pretty good. But is it going to be competitive good? It's a bit of a question. And an unfortunate question at that. But we're definitely going to see the MTG Goldfish channel playing these three cards in some combination after MH3 releases in just a couple of days. And I'm going to do my best Neo, Chris Brown, whoever impression. If I had one wish, I would see all of these cards on this screen seeing play in Modern. But Nadu, the Nadu Shuko deck that so many people have just been frothing at the mouth over, it's good, but it's easily disruptible with a Null Rod or Disruptor Flute styled effect. Alright, if you can shut down Shuko, the deck gets shut down in a big way. They can fight through it, but they gotta fight through it. Cephalid Coliseum, my Murktide playing heart loves the idea of brainstorming and filling up my graveyard more, but I already know that Murktide is tight for slots. Sacking a land is not something that you want to do, and if you've already got 7 cards in your yard, you're already trying to cast a Murktide from your hand, so there's probably something iffy going on there. Sorin, thank goodness for the month of June. We all love a good vampire, and even his human counterpart looking like Sephiroth right there. It's kind of worth it. But let's be real. Let's be absolutely real. Turning Aetherflux Reservoir into a human that turns into a walker is great. But is it going to be good? Who knows? I would love to see an Amalia style deck come into the modern format with Sorin to just finish off your opponent on the second main phase after you do the combo. It would be sick. But I don't know if we're going to get there with it. White Orchid Phantom basically making Boros Boom Bust a real deck. Basically taking Ponza and giving it a third color would be incredible. And it's got flying and first strike. You're just going to stop frustrating your opponent and actually start hitting them. Kind of worth it. But I don't know if it's going to be that competitive. Buried Alive, I remember the days of playing Mardu Pyromancer into Is It Phoenix in Modern. If they had had that card and could be Grixis Phoenix, I would have been shaking in my boots. Doomwake, again, really high on this card. A number of people on Magic Twitter are high on the card. I think it could be cool for Phoenix. I don't know if it's going to bring it back the way that people want to. In Power Balance, the perfect counter to counterbalance, giving you free spells whenever your opponent casts spells could be sick, but I don't know if it's going to be it. But again, if I had one wish, all of these would be playable cards. But that's going to be it for this Modern Horizons 3 playable card set review. Let me know in the comments if you feel like I missed some card, common, uncommon, or otherwise, that you think should be on this list. There's a reason I left out a bunch of the flares, because I don't think they're good. But let me know if you guys think that I'm wrong. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. Thumb up this video as much as you can, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.